Many times we don't understand the law. Law for the People with Eric Cedillo is here to inform, educate, and answer your legal questions. Thank you for tuning in today. From the law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, Texas, here's your host, Eric Cedillo.
Good afternoon, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on Law for the People with your host, me, Eric Cedillo. I have a very special guest today. His name is Adan Gonzalez, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about a very important event that's coming up here in the Dallas area on April 9th, a mega march that is being put together. He's going to talk about the genesis of the mega march and some other things with respect to that. Before we do that, why don't we just get a little bit of your history there, Adan? Introduce yourself and tell us what you're all about.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you again for taking the time and for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
Beyond that, I always will say this, you're a role model to all of us in the community, so I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
And from there, I at this point enjoying the journey of my education.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm finishing my master's degree, and I actually will graduate May 25th. And before that, I got my undergrad at Georgetown. And I first put my education, who I am right now, just because it's granted me my freedom. And it really exposed me to a world of opportunity and a world of empowerment, self-empowerment, that I'm very grateful for. And it goes back to my roots of where I'm from. I was born and raised in Oak Cliff.
Yeah.
Right now, I still live in South Oak Cliff. And my parents, they're immigrants from León, Guanajuato, Mexico. Both of my parents are my heroes, my role models. My dad, he's been a janitor all my life. My mom has worked in the warehouse all my life. And because of their sacrifice, hard work, just like a lot of our Latinx community members, it's under reflection of their hard work. And I think that's why I'm here today, to basically, through my education, I've earned a voice. Through the experiences of my family, I feel like I've earned a cost.
Yeah.
And now put those together, we have a responsibility to empower our community, and hopefully that's what the Mega March is going to be about. And I think that's, in general, a little bit about who I am.
Okay. Now, Adan, we've had the opportunity on the show to have you on here before, and I know we've kind of had your history, and we talked a little bit about you. But if you could currently just kind of tell the listeners, you've got an incredible program where you work with kids. Why don't you let them know a little bit about what that is and how it works?
No, absolutely. So I'm the executive director of Puede Network, which at this point we're in the works of becoming a 501c3.
Yeah. And
before that, honestly, we were just a logo and a name. And all that has to do with is that, since I was younger, my dad's always been my soccer coach, my boxing coach. And we had a lot of kids around us. The typical playing soccer at Keys Park, those who are from Dallas, and in boxing in Casa Guanajuato, Anita Martinez in West Dallas. But it was always, that was the attention my dad gave my brothers and myself. And now that I was able to go to college, everything started to make sense for me.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, this is what my dad did, which was share his time. And I think as a parent, so far, that what I've learned, I'm not a parent yet, but when I strive to become a great parent like my father, is sharing time. And from there, the components that I was learning in school was like, okay, how did I get here?
Yeah.
I'm from Oak Cliff, like Bowie, Atwell, graduate from Adamson. The reality behind, I wasn't prepared for college. And it was at no one's fault, but a system that wasn't created, which we'll get more detail about that in a bit. But at that point, it was like, okay, what helped me get here? And there were 4 things that I reflected. Was my community service, my leadership initiatives, my academic success, and my ambition support. So actually, during winter break after my freshman, first semester as a freshman, I got invited to Adamson to speak to my first group of students officially as a college student, and I was excited about sharing simple things like, oh my God, this is my coffee cup at college, my dorm, this is my food. And through that, I started sharing with them like, hey, this is what helped me win scholarships. I was able to win over $1 million in scholarships, from the Gates Millennium to the Coca-Cola. I say those 2 because it's financial need and merit.
Yeah.
And through those 4 things that I mentioned a while ago, were the things that helped me. But the reality was that, I mean, I applied to school with, and sitting at the curb of McDonald's with a laptop that wasn't mine. And my story is common. That's the thing. And when I'm home, people know this is a reality sometimes we face. And I just was fortunate and blessed that my potential was connected with opportunities and now for me, so the network became a combination of what my father did with my brothers and I growing up, with what I'm learning in school and putting it together. All these organizations that helped me, all the people that have helped me, my mentors, all those nuggets of information, the wisdom, I'm putting it together and sharing it now. I think that's what it became. And so now, what the network has, at this point, we have over 287 kids officially playing soccer in league. We have about 138 and counting. And then boxing, we have about another 85. And these kids are required to do 30 hours of community service a season, read 120 minutes a week, attend 12 civic engagement events, from like local debates for elections, go to the museum, different exposure.
Right.
And at the end, so there's a Puede Network Scholars Program, and we're getting organized. And like I said, we never had an idea what we're going to get ourselves into. It was just about fulfilling the need in our community.
Let's talk about you and why I think your highlights have been kind of shown by lots of individuals who your story is very interesting. It's difficult when you have parents who are first generation, come over from Mexico. You mentioned that your father was a janitor for a period of time. Do they primarily speak Spanish, your folks? It's difficult to have children, in that first generation, to realize education, to realize college may be a good way to step up and step out. But not only that, for you, somehow you got into Georgetown. Somehow you got into an incredibly good college in such a short period of time. What do you think was the influence? What kind of got you from, your folks who are coming from Mexico, I would imagine with not much, and doing what they could to make it here in the States and raising you guys, and then to get you to Georgetown? What was that? What do you kind of attribute that to?
I mean, well, first, I'm at Harvard now, but my dad's still a janitor. My mom still works in the same warehouse. And what has driven me since I was young, early as 7 years old, has been anger. And when I say anger, I'm going to be at first to admit it. That drove me for a long time. Yeah. I grew up in Los Ponderosa in Oak Cliff. And at that point, when you have, I didn't know there were immigration officers, green men in green uniform, knocking down our door, putting my dad in a headlock, grabbing my mom, looking for my undocumented uncle. We were in bed, flipping our bed, our covers. Like if we have him under, like there's a floor. There's no way he's under a couch. We don't have a bed. And seeing that, like, that's anger. Yeah. Seeing your parents not being able to protect themselves because they don't understand the language, fearing authority even though they did nothing wrong, always feeling grateful for others, but not understanding that they paved their way, they paid their dues, and we're, at the end of the day, the idea over human. I mean, if anything, my parents worked just as hard and sacrificed just as every American, or when I say American in this country, and to be able to feel like you're a second-class citizen or that you don't have the same value, you don't have the same rights, that continues to drive me. I mean, whenever in schools doesn't invite parents. Parents don't feel they belong in school. There's a disconnection even there. And ultimately, that's what I've seen the biggest struggle for the first generation families is becomes obstacles in our culture. If an institution doesn't welcome the outliers, those who they feel don't have those as social capital value, they forget about the human capital value. And that's what institutions are. There's a big disconnection between those. So I think a lot of the families, what helped me was that all these experiences growing up, seeing CPS take my friends away, being in schools where you don't have a heater and this is talking about 6 years ago. I was in Adamson where we didn't have a heating and a cooling system. We didn't have the books. And this is still happening now. Yeah. Now, I'm grateful that there's people talking about Girl South or different initiatives in our community. It's talk. there's no action. Until when? And that's not cool. And that's why I think for me, that's what continues to drive me.
Yeah.
That in my mind and in my heart, and many people don't agree with my style at times, is what I accepted and I'm okay with, is that my job as an educated son of immigrants, product of Oak Cliff, is to dismantle a system that wasn't created for us, the most vulnerable. I don't need to benefit from that system that I'm benefiting, that got me in higher education, because that means that I'm going to dismantle for the kids that are in my program to lead it. For me, it's very simple. People are going to tell me, follow the protocol then, and you'll be in elected office like this. I have the badges, and I'm going to continue to give the credentials, people like it or not, because now I know how to read. And because I know how to read, I know how to think for myself. And because I can think for myself, I'm going to act on my own values. And the values are the same values that my mom, where we only had 2 tomates and the vecina will come and ask for them. Even though they were our last ones, she'll still give them to them. The reality of my dad gambling at the Marsali's tire shop in front of Blessed Sacrament, that's the values that I have. That's who I am. And then now I have these letters. But for me, what I was going to matter was what I have inside, and it's hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's even more beyond that. The most difficult part for our first generation students is that not that we lack role models. We have our role models at home with our parents. Sometimes their parents don't understand the value that they provide because the system tells them that they don't. But beyond that, we lack access to opportunities, access to resources to really fulfill their potential, discover their own creativity, to even experiment on their own thoughts. So I think that's where I'm at.
Well, let's talk about that, because, there are a lot of angry individuals. And, we've talked before, and I kind of have always had a chip on my shoulder in terms of the way in which I was brought up and the way in which I was exposed to certain things. There's lots of people like that. There's lots of individuals who feel mistreated, that feel less than. For a lot of those folks, it's rage against what's happening to them. There's a reaction that maybe some would consider negative. You took a different approach. You have realized at some point that education was a way in which you could do something to assist your community and other things. Where do you think that came from? Where do you think you were able to connect the dots in terms of education being an opportunity for you to do something else?
I think, I can't quote it directly, but on my personal statement for college was something along the lines of, boxing taught me to be constructive and not destructive. Education taught me to fight with a purpose. And I think for me, I grew up boxing all my life, and that was my outlet zone of punching a bag, right?
Yeah.
Exercising.
Yeah.
And for me, the idea of an education, I didn't know that I was unprepared going into Georgetown, and I think that was the best thing that could have happened to me. That it took me a while to understand that, hey, you're a junior, but did you know that you didn't know how to read or didn't know how to write? I believe I am a very intelligent individual. When I say that is because of my street smarts, but I didn't realize how I wasn't book smart. And I think what helped me realize that was when being in a classroom, my first government class, where the professor has a class with a PO, who are here Democrats, who are here Republicans, Independents, and people were raising their hands different. And this is my first government class, and I didn't know what any of that meant.
Yeah.
And did I feel belittled? Yes. My professor asked me, so who do you represent? And all I could say was my community. And they laughed. And when I say they laughed, they thought I was probably joking, or I don't know what was humorous about it. But then you quickly understand that when they ask the next question, who in here has career or political aspirations? And then the whole class basically raises their hand. And then you realize that they're sons of congressmen, they're sons of actual CEOs, people who are controlling important elements of the way our country works, from money to laws. And then the more the class continued, they talked about the problem, the crisis, us. When I say us, the people who apparently are committing crimes, people who are not valuing their education. And then you realize, no, that's not true. I'm not a criminal. I'm not lazy. We just didn't. This is not the opportunities we're granted. Then you study more. You realize the flaws, the loopholes in laws, from money, or to just even simple the criminalization pipelines to prison, or how truancy becomes misdemeanors and misdemeanors become felonies, and you start connecting all these dots. Yeah. And then you start reading. Then you start realizing op-eds from the Dallas Morning News. Then you start following the money, who funds who. Now you understand why this person that was so nice to you, this politician, and the next thing you know, they're voting to put a cement plant, et cetera. Like all these things that don't make sense. Yeah. And it's I think that's what drove me. That it's like food. I love cookies. You eat a cookie and it's good. You eat more. And with education, that's what it's been for me. The more I'm learning, the more it feels good, because the more I feel like I'm going to be able. When I say I'm going to be able to make an impact on kids that are going to transform our world, and that's where it is right now. I enjoy learning, and I think there's no one. I believe, there's different core beliefs to successfully, I feel, organize individuals and communities. And number one is that you have to believe that every parent wants what's best for their child, whether the actions prove it, show it or not. And I think for me, once I started working with a network and saw how the vulnerable families don't know where even to start, I have to believe, regardless of what their actions show, even if their kids are not eating or they're drug addicts, whatever it is, they have some kind of hope that they want something that was best for their kids. Right. And for me, that drives me right now. That I feel that there's people who believe in what my family and I are doing with the network, and that's a responsibility to continue to learn, continue to read. And at this point, I feel like I'm just getting started.
Yeah, you graduated from Georgetown, and what'd you do after that? Immediately after you?
So I graduated from Georgetown in 2015. I deferred, didn't go immediately to grad school, which is where I'm at now. I started working for PwC. Prior to high school, I was doing international business consulting for at this point for different countries, from Colombia, Mexico, and I was going to get sent to Colombia for 6 months. But at that point, I was flying back home. I was actually working in the New York, D.C. area. Yeah. And I was flying back home every other weekend for my soccer games for my kids. Yeah. That's what I enjoyed doing. That's what gives me life. Yeah. And after they told me about my change of locations, it wasn't going to work for me, just because that's not what I had. For me, I went to work because my dream's always been to pay off my parents' house. And I wanted to change my narrative. My narrative, and the truth is, continues to be, I'm a person who has lots of dreams, but the struggle is real. I mean, like I said it before, my dad's still a janitor, my mom still works in a warehouse. We're still scratching every surface for nickels and dimes. I'm rich in knowledge now, but I wanted to change my narrative, and I went to work. And then I was there for about 6 months, came back, I think, early January, and stayed in Dallas doing community work. Didn't earn a penny. I mean, I was being helped, individuals as yourself, from donations, and those donations just went to provide resources for the work that I was trying to do. Yeah. Just talking about, well, this is more personal now. It's just, I've gotten as close as, I've taken out loans just to be able to buy soccer balls because it's something that I believe in. Yeah. And I know my organization is going to be successful. But I got to be willing myself to invest in it. And so that's what I did for full-time community work after PwC. And now I'm in school again, and I'll be graduating in May.
You're at Harvard, which is, as everybody knows, probably the one of the greatest institutions here in the United States. You're in a master's program there. What is it you're looking to do? What is it you're looking to do with your degree? And immediately thereafter, and then maybe into the future?
So my program is on education policy and management.
Okay.
And I think for me, growing up, back to the story about immigration, was that I always want to be an immigration lawyer. That was like the drive. I'm going to be a lawyer because I want to protect my family.
Yeah.
Through education, I've learned that there's another avenue that I can be the same warrior for my family and now my community. And I want to be a leader of a system. And that system that I chose is education. And I think with my master's, I'm coming home for a good 2 or 3 years, and then I'm going to go back and get my EDLD, which is my doctorate in education. So ideally, career goal, things could change every now and then, but I think right now what I'm aiming for is to be the superintendent of Dallas ISD.
Okay.
Now, again, things can change,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that. I don't, I might end up going back to law school. I don't know, but at this point, with my education policy management, I want to run my organization. At one point, when I say full time, it always feels like full time, but in a very legit way. And beyond that, at this point, I want to help anywhere that I'm invited. There's right now from the Dallas ISD to Fort Worth ISD, charter schools, networks that are tapping in. And ironically, they're tapping in to help them build family community partnerships. School family community partnerships.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I went to school to get these credentials, and now what's making me valuable is my upbringing. And that's where it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's where right now, career-wise, I'm looking at the education field, but the degree in itself, there's a policy component, which is helpful, and then there's a management, which I really appreciate, just because it's really goes into detail of respecting the different type of capitals people have, from the human capital, social capital, historical, and just school for me right now has really been organizing my life experiences, understanding how the system, right? Understanding it and how to manage it too. So.
Okay, Don, thank you so much. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, I really want to talk to you about the Mega March.
Awesome.
Kind of where it started from, where it's going, what we anticipate, what's going to come of it, all of these things. So you guys, please come back. We're going to be gone for about 2 minutes, but stay tuned, and we're going to talk about some really important stuff that's about to happen here in Dallas. So once again, come back in about 2 minutes. Thanks so much, guys.
The law offices of Eric Cedillo, a professional corporation, a firm that handles legal matters in personal injury, auto and truck accidents, wrongful death, on-the-job injuries, criminal, felony, and misdemeanor, family law, divorce, and child custody. The law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, at 214-740-1628. That's 214-740-1628. Find them on the web at cedillolaw.com. That's cedillolaw.com.
Many times we don't understand the law. Law for the People with Eric Cedillo is here to inform, educate, and answer your legal questions. Thank you for tuning in today. From the law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, Texas. Here's your host, Eric Cedillo.
Thank you so much for rejoining us again for Law for the People. We're here with a special guest, once again, Adan Gonzalez, who is the originator for the idea of having the Mega March here on April 9th that we're having here in the city of Dallas. An incredibly big event for a number of reasons, Adan. Tell us a little bit about what was the genesis for the creation of the march. I know you and I have kind of talked about what that was in terms of why and what, but let's talk about where the concept of the idea came from.
No, absolutely. I think, early on we talked about the experience of being 7 years old and experiencing what's an ICE raid. But beyond that, in 2006, I was 13 and was proudly marching with my small American flag, white shirt, and with my family.
Yeah.
And it was the first any type of advocacy demonstration or event that we attended where it was just for the empowerment of yourself, to understand that you're not alone. So I think then and now there was fear at the core of the functionality of our community. And I think this idea, well, not even idea, this reintroduction of what worked in 2006 for what I believe is my vision or drive for this march is symbolism of hope for the community. No one else but the community themselves. A lot of times we talked about messaging and the different people of influence that we want to provide that message of, like, we're here.
Yeah.
I like to believe a lot of people, the people who need to know, understand who's here.
Okay.
But I think now the community needs to be reminded that they're not alone.
Yeah. Back in 2006, I had an office right around the corner in Uptown, and I remember I took my girls, who were probably a little bit older than you, and we went, to the march, of course, and went to the cathedral, and just amazed at the size of the crowd. Some estimates had it at 500,000 people. I remember being barely able to walk. So many folks there. Incredibly proud event for me personally. We've talked about the Latino experience. I think at that time it was mainly a bounce back against what was happening, an encouragement for the change in immigration reform and some other things. This particular march probably has a little bit different flavor to it. We've had a situation where the administration has done some things that, in all honesty, I don't see couldn't be more offensive to more people and more groups than what has happened. Of course, the bans of individuals from certain countries, what many would consider Muslim bans. Of course, the way in which the administration has talked about Latinos in general, people from Mexico, is just incredibly offensive, I think, to a whole lot of folks. We've seen a lot of backlash against Jewish communities based on what is considered to be an empowerment of certain groups to feel like they can kind of come out of the shadows and do some things. So this one has a little bit different flavor. I know that in some of the organizational meetings, we've tried our best to kind of reach out to various groups, kind of bring them into what is currently happening in reaction to that. So tell me how that's kind of changed a little bit. Like I say, in 2006, it was more of a Latino flair, feel for it, and now this one's changing up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think, I'll almost say, 10 years later, we continue. We still have a long way to go, yeah. But the evolution of our community, our issues are now at light. And I think sometimes, I'm not going to say thank you to our current president, but just this idea that the reality that a lot of the Latinos or minority or vulnerable community have experienced forever, yeah. Are now out. They're public. You can't ignore them when they're constantly being repeated, when it's a platform for an office. And I think because of that, a lot of our different communities have been able to find unity and commonality within the struggle. There's this expression of we continue to be slaves with no chains. And we go back to the system the way it's not created for people of color. When I say people of color, the vulnerable. Yeah. Now, of course, we go back to rural America and the white male or whatever, or we can get into details. But the reality that I think this march is a different flair is just because we need unity. I think it's causing people to look at each other and say, you know what, I don't identify. I wouldn't say there's two sides, but there is either you don't accept people who don't look like you, or there's everyone who doesn't look like you, that even if they want to, they can't assimilate to a different culture. And I think that's why right now, especially here in Dallas, in our city, there's a constant struggle, but battle and initiatives to get people together. But there's nothing more beautiful, and I think one of the themes of this march is family and unity. There's nothing more beautiful that people can get behind. And there's that concept that as a Latino, a male, son of immigrants, I'm going to speak loud and chant what my parents have not been able to say, who've not been able to whisper.
Let's talk about that. I think we kind of glossed over in the first half, what was, kind of coming from you in terms of we talked about chips on shoulders and other things, and I think what you kind of mentioned in terms of a prompt for realizing that education, realizing that you were going to do something to affect a change that was happening. Something very powerful for you was the raid that happened in your home when ICE came to pick up you say your uncle?
Uncle.
Tell us a little bit about that. I know that what you were saying earlier, incredibly emotional for you. Was that kind of the first experience that you had with?
That's when you realize, like, what does it mean to be legal?
Yeah.
I mean, or what does it mean? Why can't my mom? Or she can't go to Mexico? Or what does it mean to? I mean, they call them well. That's when different communities have their knowledge of funds, and understanding early on that there's authority, and apparently they don't like us, regardless. Like I said, even the school is portrayed as authority and institution, and parents, we don't have nothing to do with that. So I think that early on, it was you understand that hay papeles, la migra, or whatever different concepts that just separates people.
Let's see if we can't set the stage or the scene for how this kind of played itself out. How old were you when the raid occurred?
7 years old.
7 years old. And was your uncle actually living with you guys, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know how they got the address, or how that kind of played itself out?
I don't. I would assume there could be two things I can think of. One, when you're doing the immigration process, you always have references or people that you write in your application. So any type of application documentation, I'm pretty sure we were written down as a reference.
Okay.
Two, there is. I'm pretty sure. We could have had a bill and have put our address.
Right.
But this is connecting the dots, and I think that's when it gets interesting. At least for me, our experience was, the fear of even stepping out of your home, or that's one. But the fear of actually even living and people coming to your own home is.
What time of day or night was this?
It was night. It was 2, 3 in the morning.
2 or 3 in the morning, really. And who was there? Who was there at the house?
My dad, my mom. We lived in an apartment, so it was a small room. It was my dad, my mom, my grandma, and at that point, 3 brothers.
Okay.
Our uncle wasn't there.
Who answered the door? Do you recall?
My dad did.
Okay. And then what happened?
At that point, so then you had the little chain for the door.
Right.
Well, for me, I remember, so we all slept in the same room. And I remember seeing just the first initial, my dad opened the door, and that's it.
You pushed open the door.
Pushed open the door. Next thing you know, my dad's in the floor. My mom, first thing's crying. They have her like in a type of headlock type of system. And then from there, for us, I saw you said it before. Even just thinking about it now, it's, yeah.
If you can share with us what actually happened with your uncle, did they finally locate him? Or
No.
Do you recall what happened?
No, they, from what I understand, after that incident, I believe they do a perdón, so which means he goes back and presented himself with immigration.
Okay.
And I think that's where it gets interesting. I think where people need to understand, and even beyond this country, we talk a lot about a lot of different things, and when the concept of institutions. Most recently, we had kids walking out of school. I remember when I was 13, I walked out of school. Now, people are worried, from even our own community, are saying, hey, why are these kids? And I understand. There's kids who are just walking out because they're following the group or don't have reasoning. Now, understand one thing. Kids, especially in urban school districts, have every right to walk out of schools when these institutions are not preparing us for a higher education. When we don't have the resources, we don't have the tools, they have every reason to walk out of school, but they're not walking out for those. We're not walking out for how vulnerable the institution is. We're walking out for one thing only, and that's family. And I think that speaks deep, it speaks in the roots, deep in the hearts of the Latinos, of the Muslim community, of the Asian community, of any vulnerable community. The one thing that we have that people are now, and they're coming together, is for family. Because we have every other reason to protest. We have every other reason to seek justice. And the one thing that we're speaking on, the one thing that we're coming together is don't separate our families. don't mess with my dad, don't mess with my mother.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I think for those listeners who are listening from other parts of the country and actually other parts of the world where we actually have some listeners, Dallas Independent School District is close to 75% Latino, which really means that we have a whole lot of folks that are lots of students who are first generation, if not second generation. Lots of parents are first generation immigrants to our communities. So we've got a whole lot of schools that are, a good percentage are people of color. And when we see walkouts and other things, you see the faces, you see a number of individuals who are closely tied to what's happening. So the response, in terms of walking out, literally, if this is going to happen to my parents, if this is going to happen to me, we've had an opportunity to be in the schools over the last year or so, and we were doing some voter registration things. And what I was amazed by just 5-6 years ago when we were doing these things, I had a whole lot of students who were capable of DACA assistance. We had a lot of individuals who were, yes, I'm really excited about this when it rolled out in 2012. Now we go back, and a lot of these kids who are brothers and sisters of those DACA recipients are, actual U.S. citizens, and it's different. They don't know what DACA is, which I'm like, that's very good. These folks these kids won't have to worry about it as much. But that's what we kind of miss. We have a tendency to miss is that this is very closely tied to what's happening. These aren't kids who are third or fourth generation Americans. Our kids currently in DSD, when you talk about reform, when you talk about changes, it directly affects them. It directly affects their parents. And as you know, we have a real close familial tie within our culture.
And I think that's why that's what sparked launching this march again, was that so many people in our community just need some spark of hope. And I think everywhere we turn, we see a lot of hate.
Yeah.
And we're kind of getting used to it. And that's a problem. And at this point, for me, I believe what impacted me 10 years ago was seeing unity. So I will say it again. This march is for the people themselves. This march is for those kids to be able to look around and say, "I'm not alone."
Yeah.
And now if we spread a bigger message than that, great.
Yeah.
But the message in itself will be within our own city, for us. This is for us, for no one else.
Let's talk about that. We've had conversations about this and the purpose of the march. And for me, one of the things I think that can come out of the march, absolutely the unification of individuals, the empowerment within the community. For me, I think when we had 500,000 people coming out and showing a show of unity, I think that has a practical impact with respect to policy, politicians. They're seeing these things. Do you think that has any potential for having or affecting any change on, maybe on a national stage, definitely on a relatively regional or local stage? Do you think that has any practical impact to what's happening?
Absolutely. I think the first thing in any elected position to encourage people, you need to recruit people. And for people we recruit need to be motivated and inspired. And I think once you put the people who are feel empowered and feel they can make a difference, and then you connect them with genuine good people who, want to bring that voice to legislature, then that's when we get the ball moving, and that's when, hopefully, as I'll say it again, you'll run for mayor soon.
Yeah. So we have a lot of people who hopefully will come out to this march. Some people may be concerned about what could potentially happen. Do you guys have any fear of that? Do y'all have any fear of we've seen a lot of in the smaller marches that have kind of led up to the big mega march on April 9th, counter-protesters, people coming out and wanting to stir up trouble and other things. Do you anticipate any of that with this march?
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be, I personally myself, this is where privilege comes in, right? The privilege of growing up in the hood. I'm not afraid, no.
Yeah.
I understand the law, the justice system is not it's not equitable, right? I think that's the word. So, but what I do fear is, is from what we see in different demonstrations, the aggressiveness from those specific groups. I think we've done it before, a peaceful demonstration, and we'll do it again. You can always have in the back of your mind, right, something happening, especially we saw in Dallas most recently with the other march. But at this point, for me, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and repeatedly throughout the meetings that we've been having, I think the word is peaceful protest, and I think that's very important for a number of reasons. The biggest, of course, being that we don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't want any situations to arise that that's going to affect anybody long term. So unification, peace, family. What are some other of the things or the unification or the message that is being preached about this march?
A specific message that at least I would say the younger folks are bringing in is education. Education is our freedom, and that concept that, as you were mentioning, our generations are coming forward. It's our job now that we have access. When say to whatever education we might have access to, but now the idea that if we were born here. Like, I have the privilege that I was born in America or in the U.S. Now, what does that mean is that I have to prepare myself to be able to empower those around me, and at the same time, obviously be the voice for those who don't have one. So the message then is for the young, the youth, is that it's a call to action, a call to understand that, we're begging people to vote. It should be part of our norms, our customs, and I think once people start being educated and informed, that's how change becomes, then we're going to be really that giant that we're constantly waiting for it to wake up.
Okay, then we're going to take a quick, short break. I want to encourage you guys to please come back. We're going to have some final thoughts about the march specifically and some other things. So please return in 2 minutes and probably about 20 seconds. Talk to you soon.
Many times we don't understand the law. Law for the People with Eric Cedillo is here to inform, educate, and answer your legal questions. Thank you for tuning in today. From the law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, Texas. Here's your host, Eric Cedillo.
Thank you so much for rejoining us, guys. We're here again with our special guest, Adan Gonzalez, who is fresh in from Harvard School, where he's attending and working on a master's degree there. Adan, before the break, we were talking about the march. Just wanted to give some logistics for the folks who are listening in. The march is happening on April 9th, which is Palm Sunday. It's going to start at 2 p.m. in front of the cathedral on Ross Avenue in downtown Dallas. First off, we'd encourage everyone to go out there and march in a real peaceful venue and opportunity. I think everyone is kind of showing a patriotism. We encourage folks to come out in wearing their red, white, and blue. And we've talked about kind of some of the themes of unification and things of that nature, Adan. And we've kind of, like I say, this one's a little bit different, I think, than in 2006. A lot has happened, even in the city of Dallas with respect to what's happening. There might be a little fear out there in terms of what people are thinking and coming out to a march. How do you kind of address that in terms of people who might be a little concerned about coming out and meeting up with some resistance?
Well, no, first of all, that concern, it's legit. Like, I understand, and all of us have some type of different concern about the way of dealing with it. There's two ways. You could, ignore it, not be active, and the problem will still be there. Now, the other, I guess you could say, the way of dealing with it is facing it forward.
Yeah.
And what that means to me is, showing up and understanding I'm looking at the expression, grab the bull by its horns. And I think it's important, as any parents that are listening today, is that for me as a son, I'm the reflection of my parents. And I think it's important, this event, it's important to show up, but this event itself is being formed to empower. We are not making this event to put anyone in danger. We're not making this event to put anyone in a vulnerable position. So if anything, I will remind every parent that's out there that, show up, be the example for your kids of what it means to speak up, for themselves, because that's going to take us a long way when you almost not command, but you mandate or you seek equal justice, when you seek rights as to live. And at the end of the day, if you want your kids to have a better life than you, just like I know my parents do, is that this is an opportunity to show them with actions. Sometimes we don't know how to have that conversation. Sometimes we don't know how to tell them it's going to be okay. But trust me, in 2006, although things were difficult, and things are still difficult now, when I was around everyone else who were just pouring love and great vibes, I feel it's going to be okay.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Adan. I want to thank you so much for coming down. I know you're heading back to school soon, and logistically having to kind of deal with the march coming up. It's right around the corner. I would encourage everyone listening to please attend. If you have any questions, there's a Facebook page. If you look up Mega March 2017, I think you can find it and look at the information that is listed. We would encourage everyone to come out. It's certainly open to everyone, but one of the big themes is that. So everyone who wants to come out, come on down. It's going to be as peaceful. That's the encouragement that we're having everyone who's going to be in attendance to kind of come with and contemplate. And you talk about the vibe. In all honesty, incredibly powerful and good vibe back in 2006. We want to have the same thing in 2017. So please become part of history. Come on out. If you need any additional information, please feel free to ask questions on the Facebook page, and we'd be happy to answer them there. Adan, thank you so much once again, buddy. We'll talk to you real soon, and we look forward to a lot of great things in your future. Thank you guys so much for joining with us on Law for the People with Eric Cedillo. We come to you every Friday from 1 to 3. We're not in Arlington right now, where we're usually filming from. But please rejoin us and listen in every Friday from 1 to 3 for Law for the People. You guys have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.